let's talk a little bit about the process of strategic design. Like, I want to show you a kind of a bird eye view of this design process, because I believe it's very important to understand how this everything works, like all those steps, the flow of activities basically that could help us to get to what we want in a kind of design, strategic design perspective. So as you can see, there's a line here, and everything on the north side of this line, these are these steps and activities, tools, techniques that are more related to the beginning part, like the validation of the idea and assumptions and all those hypotheses that we had in the beginning. And everything's on the south side is related to this creative problem solving process of synthesizing the idea. Okay, so let's get started. And in each step, I'm going to talk about different tools that we could use, and that, like, choosing the best tool or technique would like, it depends on many different things, like the budget that we have, or manpower, or most importantly, the time that we have to get a project done. So let's get started with the first step. The first step of any project would be like creating your initial value proposition. Like any strategic design project starts with initial value proposition. So what we want to have, what we want to offer to our users. That's the value that we want to offer to our users. And it's important to know how we want to convert that value, the user value, into business value. But these are all some assumptions or hypotheses that we have right in the beginning. So my suggestion is to write down a vision statement. And this vision statement usually includes, like, it captures three different assumptions. What's our initial value proposition, the solution that we want to offer to our users, the targeted user group, like this solution is a great solution for a specific group of people. Okay, so that targeted user group is very important as well, and their main problem that we are solving. So as you can see, these three assumptions are always tied together. Like, we cannot talk about any of these without having the others in mind. Okay, so that's the reason we use this structure. Like, for example, to have a good vision statement, like strategic design vision statement, because we have different types of vision statements. Okay, here I'm talking about the strategic design vision statement. Okay, and if we answer these questions, these three questions, which actually these are more than three questions, like, but in three sets. Okay, we can come up with those statements that we capture basically all those three assumptions. The target user group, for example, is one of the assumptions. Okay, and their main concern, basically the problem that they have. Okay, this is already two assumptions here. Okay, what would you like to offer? And that's the value proposition, and why you think that would be something that's worthwhile, like valuable for our user group. So and so forth. Like, what would be your perspective, like short, long time goal or midterm goal? Yeah. So this is the vision statement part of the story. Then the next step would be this user research that we do. Like, as we started with kind of initial value proposition, all these things are assumptions, and we don't want to go move and invest time on something that's not validated yet. That's the reason we do some kind of user research. Could be interview, survey, observation, different research techniques basically. Okay, and the goal is to validate all those three assumptions. So problem interview is one of the techniques that we use here. We usually use in this kind of a strategic design. And there are three sections to this interview, to the questions that we usually ask. Screener, setting up context, money shot. These are these categories, and basically these three categories or groups of questions, these validate those three assumptions that we had right in the beginning about the user, about their problem, and about our idea. So after conducting a problem interview and processing the information, doing this kind of data analysis and everything, at the end we would be able to conclude if all these assumptions or hypotheses are validated, and how we at the end we would be confident that we are going into the right direction. It's like the information that we collect here, the user insight, it would also help us to create our users requirement document. And that document could be in different forms, basically. Customer profile is one of the most important things or tools that we have here. We could also use empathy map, user journey map, persona, different things, or basically combination of all these things. And I'm going to show you again here some examples like customer profile. These three steps as we visited before, and then we prioritize all those things that we've written about: user's task or user jobs, all those things that the user want to get done through our solution, their pains, and we sort them based on the importance, like the task based on importance, pain based on severity, and gains based on this relevance. Okay, the most important gains, the most important pains, and everything. So that would be one of the ways that we basically collect, sort, and write down all those things that we about the users. Okay, so the other tools that, as I mentioned, one of them is this empathy map, and this is a great tool as well. It's easy, simple to create, amazing. Another thing, user journey map that we can use, or persona. So these are the tools that we usually use during this kind of the process of listing the user's requirement. Okay, another thing that's very important in this strategic design is to study the competitors, basically. Okay, and those competitors' features are important, but there are many other important things there as well. Like, for example, when we do market research, we try to find which market segment is the best segment to take. We want to, like we talked about, this blue ocean, red ocean. So that's the reason targeting market segment, this positioning is very important to help us to get to this blue ocean. Competitive research and analysis, heuristic evaluation, usability studies, benchmarking, and tons of other techniques that we could have and we already reviewed before. Those are the things that the tools like positioning, like these metrics, these are some amazing tools that we could use in our research, basically. So that's like these two parts, like it's very important to make sure that these two parts are about the same thing, same product, the same solution. Okay, so all those things that are listed as users requirement should be kind of in harmony with the products and features that we think that could kind of solve the same user's problem. Okay, so in that case, we had this direct and indirect competitors and all those things. Okay, then the south side of the line, where we start this process of problem solving, and that's the most important part that I want to talk about today. Okay, so sometimes we try to convert these two things, like the inside about the user and competitors, into some kind of design requirement. In that case, we use a tool called, for example, value map, which is the best one, and because it's in harmony with the customer profile that we've already used. Okay, then how we solve the problem could be also listed in different ways, like functional, informational, contextual, and many other things. So I'm going to show you some these examples here. Like the value map, as I mentioned, is one of the things that help us to make sure that it's kind of fit to this customer profile and user insight, customer requirements, basically. That's where we have here, like users requirement. And another thing is that we can do is kind of to create a users requirement list based on this kind of grid-based kind of thing. Functional requirement, data requirement, contextual requirement, and many other things. And we can create these things for different pages, for different sections or services or features of our product, basically. So let's get back here. But I didn't mention this part because this context scenario kind of could be important, but it depends on the project. Sometimes we don't go through this path. We just go and list this design requirements. But in some projects, this is also important, like creating like users' expectations, like step-by-step kind of user system interaction. We can do that through this kind of context scenario, which is discussed in this book about phase. And here you can see an example, like what you can see here. This in context scenario, we usually list all those user system interaction steps, like based on the ideal situation, basically. Okay, and then from each of these steps, we can take out we can extract basically our user system interaction like as a kind of activity, or then that's how we can create our workflow, user workflow. Talking about the user workflow, let's get back to that, because usually the output of this context scenario is this grid kind of thing, this table. And this would be the result, like it kind of we can list it as our design requirement. Okay, but the other tools could be also used here, like behavioral map, like as kind of complementary tools, that would help also to create a better design requirement. But at the end, the output would go here, like all the list of and all items in the list, like functional, informational, like those items would go into the next step, which is this kind of user workflow. So what's user workflow? Basically, in user workflow, we try to map whatever we had in mind in our value proposition, like as a kind of abstract form of the function of the system. Okay, we can map them into some kind of operational, like from the functional perspective, which is kind of outside perspective. We're going to go through this kind of operational perspective, like how those components of our system should interact and the details of interaction and everything, which I call operational perspective, like how our system should operate in interaction with the user to deliver the required functions. So all those features that we had in mind, all those system, everything that we listed here in a value map, we can now here create workflows for them. An example of workflow, I have one of them here. For example, a workflow of an application that I designed, like it's kind of warehouse scanner app. One of the workflows could be this receiving flow, okay? And this receiving flow, like, starts from here, and action by action, there's some decision and or condition nodes, and it goes through all those steps, and at the end we get our job done. So what's the workflow? How complex it is? It depends, but that would be how we map the operation of our system, basically. Okay, and it could be different. Like, we can use different tools to create our user workflow. One could be this activity diagram that I just showed you. The other one could be a sequence diagram, and there could be tons of different tools that we can use. Maybe I can show you one here. Like, this is another activity diagram, but if different user roles are involved, like requester, manager, technician, inventory, equipment, and many other things that are involved, we create this kind of lane-based activity diagram, and then the different phases of the work, basically. So these are just some examples of these the same thing, the user workflow. Okay, so it could be sequence diagram as well, could be activity diagram. There are different types of diagram. The important part is that we could get to that point that each detailed user system interaction would be mapped. Another example that I have here is this one. For example, process of purchasing something, like when you end up into a landing page of a kind of e-commerce website, then you search for something, applying filter, and viewing the list of products, and you can apply more filters to refine the list, and then you go, like, select a product and go to that product page, read the description, everything. So as you can see, these are all those activities that the user should do in interaction with the system that we are designing. And there might be some decision or condition nodes as well. Like, if the product, like, after reading those reviews, if the guy liked the product, would add it to the cart, or if it's not that much acceptable, the guy would get back to the list, choose another product, and repeat the same process. So so there would be some condition nodes as well, and step by step, and at the end one task would be done, like one task would be accomplished by the user. Okay, so this is how we use the workflow to understand, first of all, understand the user system interaction, and we try to describe it in the best way how it should be done. Okay, so the solution would be effective and efficient and everything, and it should be also based on the user's mental model, like how users usually purchase something on an e-commerce. We don't want to change the whole the user's mental model. We want to understand the user mental model and follow the same logic in the same sequence of actions, basically. So that's one of the things. And when we have our user workflow, the next thing would be to create our design specification. Okay, and this is the most important part in a design process, like mapping operation to architecture. Like any design, like process, like let me explain it this way to you. Like, we have a nail clipper here, okay, and this nail clipper basically has an architecture. Like, there's handle, there are some kind of, I don't know, blades maybe, and there's kind of shaft here, and there's a hole here, and these two plates are welded maybe at this side. So when we look at this is nothing but architecture of a product. Like all products are architecture, but they deliver some kind of function, operation, basically. Like when we push this part in, then it's kind of closes this blades and would eventually cut the nail. Okay, so operation is the result of some kind of architectural design. So, but design projects usually start with operational requirement, like our users need this and or that. So design requirements are those things that we start our project with, like the value proposition, how we want to solve the value proposition by offering something. And we think about the operation. We don't, like, we might think about the architecture in the beginning, but the goal is to deliver the operation that's required by the user. And here, like this would be the last point that we talk about all those functional requirements, everything, like we have it here. Okay, so that's why I believe this part is very important, because this mapping could happen in different ways. Okay, like operation could be, like the same operation could be delivered in different architecture. We could have for example, for drawing a line, we could have a pen, we could have a pencil, we could have a brush, we could have like all these could draw a line, but each of them work in a different way, with a different mechanism, with a different architecture, basically. Okay, so what I mean is that this design specification here plays an important role. That's the beginning of the thinking of the architectural component of the system that could deliver the operation, the required operation. Okay, and now that we have the workflow, we've broken down those the functionality of the system and the functional requirement into operational steps, the activities, interaction. All those are operational steps, and that's why now we would be able to think of the architectural component, the architectural aspect of the system that could deliver those things. So here I'm showing you one of this design specification kind of thing. It's usually like this. Let me find it here. It's usually like this, that we have those steps, and when we have those steps, those are like, for each of them we have an architectural component. Like this step, we have an architectural component. This step, we have an architectural component. Something like this. But at the end, we could have them like a kind of hierarchy way. I'm gonna talk about this hierarchy of system specification in another recording. But for now, let's think about this, that okay, for each action or activity, we could have an architectural kind of specification, and that's what we describe here, design specs. Okay, and the next step would be this design ideation process. Like we come up with a solution, we design something, we ideate about the thing, how the system should work and everything, and then we create a wireframe or prototype or anything, and then we go to the user to validate. For example, it could be different techniques, but these are more kind of summative research techniques. And then getting feedback, we get back to the design table, and we think about another aspect of the story, and we repeat these 3 steps again and again, and that's what we call design sprints. Okay, so design ideation could be about different things. Like, could be about information architecture, could be about navigation system, could be about the usability, functionality, task coverage, accessibility, interaction, visual design, many different things. And usually in each sprint or in each cycle, we deal with only one of them. I'm going to talk about this later in more details. And we use different tools to implement the design, and we use different techniques to validate the result. But at the end, the design that goes out of these cycles, this iteration, that would go to the dev team or to the realization team, basically. It could be manufacturing part of that, could be coding, programming, or a combination of these things. So basically, this could be the end of this design process, strategy design process, basically.